Hello, folks, and welcome to Club Passim. This is our live stream for tonight, though we are also starting to do some things back in the club. So you will start to see less of this virtual space, and you'll also have the option to join us in person. Tonight we have another in our series of Tell&Act, a monthly series that we have been doing for many months now, most of the pandemic. We have been partnering with the wonderful organization Tell&Act to bring you this storytelling series. But before we get on to your stories for tonight, I want to tell you just a little bit about Passim and what we do over here. We are a nonprofit organization, and we've been running as a venue in Harvard Square for the last 60 years, over 60 years. But we've been a nonprofit for the last 26, and it's because of your support that we have been able to survive as a nonprofit for over 25 years, and especially due to your support that we have been able to survive over these past 15 months. It has been a difficult year for everyone, but because of everyone still wanting to come out and watch shows, we have been able to bring you these live streams online. In addition to bringing live streams most nights of the week for the past year, we've also moved all of our School of Music online, so you can still take classes and workshops. We have started up our virtual open mic once again that has music and stand-up and storytelling. And we started a fund to help artists and musicians in the Passim community, and because of your generosity, we were able to raise and distribute over $160,000 this past year to artists in the Passim community for living costs, just because things are difficult right now, and things are getting better, but we aren't out of the woods yet. So we still rely on your support to keep running. So if you would like to make a donation to the show tonight, you can go to passim.org/stream, and we're suggesting a $12 donation. This will be split between both Passim so that we can continue to bring you programming like this, and with Tell&Act, our great organization who has been putting on this series for the last several months with us. Even if you're not able to support us financially, thank you for coming out. Thank you for supporting us and the storytellers. Be sure to share this on your different socials. This is going to stay up for a couple days, so please share it with your friends, or call your friend right now that you think need to watch it live. The performers will be able to see your comments in the chat, so feel free to shout out where you are, or if you are a storyteller as well, or if you want to get in touch with these folks, they'll be able to see all of your lovely comments as well. So thank you for joining us tonight. Make a donation if you can. And if you can't, sit back, enjoy the show. We're happy to have you with us. I'm going to turn things over to one of the co-founders of the organization Tell&Act to take you through this night of stories from people all over the country. Still, one of the perks of being able to do things virtually that we are not going to let go of is being able to present talent from across the country and across the world. But to tell you about tonight, I'm going to pass things over to Anna Willis Collier.
Thank you, Abby, and thank you, Club Passim, for hosting this evening. We're really excited. We've got a wonderful evening planned. My name is Anna Willis Collier, and I am the co-founder and director of Tell&Act. I run that company with my wonderful partner, Cheryl Hamilton, who many of you will know or may know from Mass Mouth, which was a local Boston storytelling organization. I'll tell you a little bit more about soon and some of the events that we've got coming up that you can look for. But you can, if Abby, you wouldn't mind putting our address to our website, Tell&Act, in the comments, that would be splendid. Thank you. So without further ado, I'm really excited to present all of the storytellers this evening. We have 4 magnificent storytellers who have featured all over the US and won many accolades between them. We have a couple. We have 2 from down in Houston, and we have 2 from Seattle. And this is the wonderful thing and the silver lining that is virtual. We have been able to wander the planet and meet and listen to and discover the talent of all these incredible people. And we just finished filming both in Houston and in Seattle for Stories from the Stage. So that is the national TV show produced by World Channel and GBH in collaboration with us at Tell&Act as we find the talent, we curate the show and coach the talent, or help coach the talent. So yes, we've just finished filming them, and their stories, their episodes will be featuring in the fall. So we're really excited about that. But for now, we will bring you a selection of these wonderful people this evening to tell. Well, we asked them either their favorite story or a new cool story that they wanted to try. So I'm really excited to hear these stories. First up, we have the wonderful, excuse me to bring that up, the wonderful Kent Whipple. He is a Seattle storyteller, and he has shared his stories throughout the US. He's participated in many Moss Slams and Grand Slams and has featured on Risk and Storytelling Podcast, to name just a few. Kent is a story coach at Ignite Seattle and resident storytelling teacher and coach at Unexpected Productions Improv, where he also hosts Inside Story. And you can find more details about Kent, an event that he has coming up, in the comments. So I hand stage to you, Kent Whipple. Take it away.
Thank you, Anna. At the end of my freshman year of college, when I was 19 years old, I was hired by an acting company, the Oklahoma Theater Center. I was going to be Wiley in Wiley and the Hairy Man, their children's theater show that would tour the state of Oklahoma. And I also got cast in the ensemble of Cabaret. I was psyched because I was going to make my fame and fortune as an actor. But before I had my fortune, I had to move back in with my parents, Bernie and Sherry, in Oklahoma City, my mom and my stepdad. They got married the summer before my senior year of high school. So still, they were basically newlyweds, being 2 years into their marriage. Now, my mom, Sherry, she was 120 pounds soaking wet. She had bleach blonde hair in a Dorothy Hamill style, and was always wearing fire engine red lipstick. And my stepdad, Bernie, he had style, always in these nice leisure suits that he would wear to his job at JCPenney's. But I was psyched. I was meeting all these new people at rehearsals and during the shows. And after the shows, we'd go out for coffee, either at a truck stop, a diner, or at someone's houses. And we'd share our stories and get to know each other. And I made a new squad. My friend Connie, who played my mom in Wiley and the Hairy Man, who was boisterous and loud and would say anything. Scott, who was the Hairy Man, as well as the lead in Cabaret. He was kind of our leader as well. And my friend Lisa, who was in the ensemble, she and I got into shenanigans together, like doing ecstasy at a Waffle House. And my mom, Sherry, was always asking, when are you going to be home? What time are you going to get home tonight? Every night, all the time. Well, I didn't know roommate etiquette because I never really had a roommate. So I didn't know you're supposed to do those things. And I was always flippant like, I don't know, Mom, before the sun rises. I also noticed around the house. Now, my mom collected tchotchkes and her bookcases were filled with knickknacks of everything. But I noticed in the living room, on top of the record console, there was this new 3-foot ceramic statue of a nude man and woman kissing and in an embrace. Now, you couldn't see any naughty bits except his hand was on her butt, but it was a little racy. And in the corner, there was a new hanging lamp that in the center had a Venus de Milo, and then this fish wand strand that would drip oil like raindrops. It was tacky, but my mom, she thought it was sensual. And I thought, when did their place become the new Playboy Club? Well, I assumed that the naughty statue my mom bought on one of her many garage sale adventures. But when I asked her about it, she told me she made it at the Paint the Town ceramic shop, which was in a strip mall not far from their house, next to the Jesus is Lord pawn shop. She said that it was she and Bernie's love and represented their relationship. Ew. Well, she was always asking when I was going to be home. And right that time, she's like, "What time are you going to be back?" And thank God we didn't have to talk about Eros anymore because a horn honked. And it was Connie and Scott to pick me up to take me to rehearsals. And Mom said, "Listen, Kent Leslie, we're going to talk tomorrow morning, or if you get home tonight, but we're going to talk." Now, that's something a kid loves to hear. We're going to talk. Well, the next morning, around 7 a.m., bam, bam, bam. "Kent Leslie, meet me in the kitchen." So I groggily woke up, head to the kitchen. It smelled of coffee, and there was cigarette smoke everywhere, and the fog of tension. And Sherry was a nervous wreck. She was sitting at the kitchen table, and she was twirling a coffee mug. She never did that. So I got my coffee and rubbed the sleep out of my eyes. And I said, "Well, what's up?" Because I was wondering, what did I do wrong this time? And she says, after she's tapping her fingers on the kitchen table, she was a nervous wreck. She says, "Kent Leslie, Bernie and I, the reason," big sighs, lots of big dramatic sighs, "we're not trying to get into your business. The reason we're asking when you're going to be coming home is, well, we've grown accustomed to not having anybody around." And twirl of the coffee mug again. "Well, Kent Leslie, sometimes Bernie and I like to dance naked in the living room." I was gobsmacked. I didn't know what to say. Uh, so I just looked at her and I said, "Well, I'm not going to join you." "Oh, I knew you'd be flippant about it." I mean, how do you respond to that? And to your mom? And that image, ew. It's so, she said, "Kent, you promise me that you won't tell any of your theater friends, I didn't get that, ab- about any of this." And I said, "Oh, Mom, I promise. I won't." Of course, I told everyone. But in the conversation, we agreed that from now on, I would either tell them when I was going to be home or I'd call them when I was on my way home. Well, it was right near final dress rehearsal of Cabaret. And I invited everyone over to our house because I'd been to everyone else's house, and it was kind of my turn to reciprocate. Um, I forgot to call. So we get to the house, Scott, Connie, and I. Hot August night, bugs all over the porch light. I'm putting my key into the lock, and I open up, and wafting down the hallway was Vicky Carr singing, "Please be him, it must be him, or I shall die." And I thought, oh no. Then I heard, "Kent, stay where you are right now, don't come in." Well, I look back and I see Connie and Scott and Lisa all giggling, looking at me, and I'm like, oh. Well, when we got the all clear, we went into the kitchen and they were ribbing me and teasing me. So I went to the Mr. Coffee to start making coffee when my mom came in. She was dressed in pajamas and a robe, and her hair was askew, and her lipstick was a mess. And I wanted to die. And she says, "Hi, everyone. I'm Sherry. I'm Kent's mom." Well, I just stayed at the Mr. Coffee machine, kind of acting like, you had to have an engineering degree to make coffee in a Mr. Coffee, trying to avoid what was going to be utter humiliation. And I turn and I look back and I see Scott holding his mouth like this, tears welling up in Lisa's eyes as she smiles, and leave it to Connie. Connie, it was kind of that, see no evil, hear no evil statue. It was like a really weird version of that. And Connie, she just belts out, "So, Sherry, what was that wonderful music you were listening to when we came in?" And I actually wanted to go kick her under the table. And my mom's like, "Oh, that's Vicky Carr." We love listening to Vicky Carr. We'd listen to her or when we dance. I thought everyone was going to lose it. And in like this 1960s montage of scenes popping up in my head, I see the Eros statue, I see the Venus de Milo, I see the Vicky Carr album, and then I start picturing Bernie and Sherry nude dancing. And I realized my parents are having sex. Ew. I'm 19 years old in the prime of my sexual life, and my parents are having more sex than I am. I realized at that moment that God bless my parents, that they were sexual beings and it was okay. But I also realized I needed to start saving some money and move out. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you. I just realized when you said I just realized my parents are having sex. And as you said that, I went, ew. And I actually went, ew, before you even said ew. And I'm 48. I
Yeah,
had a
ew.
kid before now, but still, it's such a visceral reaction.
Yeah, and it's not an image you want to burn.
No. And I like the line, how do you respond to that, Jim? I don't know. I don't have any advice for you, but thank you for sharing that story. It was funny.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next storyteller, also a talented Seattle storyteller from Seattle, is a professional improviser. Sorry, her name is Melissa Reese. She is a professional improviser and a storytelling and presentation coach for executives with her company Story Fruition LLC. You can find the links to her company and all that she does in the link below. In the comments. She's also the proud mother of 2 kids, along with several cats dispersed amongst them. Melissa is the proud protege of Mr. Kent Whipple. I think we know him already, who taught her the elements of storytelling. She has won several storytelling shows and has featured on The Moth, Risk Show, National Storytellers Network, Ignite Seattle, NAMI, Fresh Ground Stories, and NPR. Whew. Melissa is also the producer, director of a social justice platform called Melanin Stories Matter. I give the stage to you, Melissa Reeves. Take it away.
Thank you. It's August 26, 1998, and I'm holding my newborn daughter, Quincy. She's perfect. She's perfect. And I say to her, I just want you to have a happy life, and I will love you no matter what. 3 years later, I'm standing in the backyard, and it's Mother's Day. We're going to take our picture together, but Quincy's pissed. She does not like this little blue dress that I've put her in. She's like, I don't want to wear it. I hate it. I'm like, honey, come on. It goes with your pretty blue eyes. No. I'm like, all right. That year's picture came out like this. By 5, I asked Quincy, what do you want to be when you grow up? A boy. What? A boy. You're so funny. That's so original. What? By 12, Quincy's a tween and has a huge crush on Sherlock Holmes with Benedict Cumberbatch posters all over the wall, and admits that she has a crush on Cora, some action figure, female figure, and I think, okay, well, she's a tween. Let's just see how this one plays out. By 16, Quincy's out. And I'm actually okay with that. There were scenes or signs that I was seeing, but also a teenager. They're still figuring this stuff out. I don't know. It might be a phase. I'm okay with it. I was a little worried, though, about the homogenized boys in our neighborhood who might give her a little bit of troubles. And when they did, like they'd call her a dyke, she would basically hand them their white little asses on a silver platter. And that's when I knew I had a tough kid, someone strong. By 19, Quincy has lopped off their long, thick, beautiful hair, boy short. Wow. Quincy's in college, and I'm standing there in front of her closet, and I'm noticing that all of the dresses are like to the side. Yeah, leave them there, Mom. Okay. I can't help but notice that the main wardrobe is filled with long sleeve shirts and heavy jackets, and the shoes are men's. Okay, what's going on here? Is my kid confused? Like, Quincy? Yeah? Do you really want to be a boy? I'm noticing your clothing's changing. Mom, I'm in therapy and we're talking about it. But basically, I think gender is bullshit. I don't believe in it, and sometimes I feel feminine, sometimes I feel masculine, but it's just me. I'm just non-binary. Non-binary? What? I'm just me. And if you wouldn't mind, I would appreciate if you could use the they pronoun. They? That's not even grammatically correct. I know, Mom, but that's what we have, so if you could try. Okay, so I do. Can we just make a deal that if you're going to alter your body, though, in any way, can you please just tell me you'll wait till you're 25? Because you're still an adolescent. Your body and your brain is still developing. And I just worry that, like, you might do something really permanent and then regret it, because maybe this is a phase. Maybe I'm hoping it's a phase. I'll think about it, Mom. Okay. At 22, I'm sitting in the surgeon's office, and Quincy is going to take a $4,500 GoFundMe and turn it into top surgery and reduce their breasts. As we're going through the obligatory insurance, there's this one question that just stops Quincy cold. It says, "You understand that this is elective surgery, don't you? Please check this box." No. No, Mom. Mom, this is not elective. This is not elective. Just shave these tits off of me. This is not elective. I go, "Shh, honey." And as I look into those deep blue eyes, I'm feeling this pain now. I'm feeling it. And I remember, I will love you no matter what. And here we are. Honey, you gotta sign that paper. We can't argue with the insurance companies right now. To get that surgery, you're gonna have to sign. And they do. The surgeon then walks in, and she's fantastic. Like, I immediately felt trust with her. She prepares us for what the pre-op's going to be, the day of the surgery, and then afterwards, how it will be with the drainage tubes and changing the dressing. I can't help but ask, how many times do you do this in a week? Because this is my kid going on a table with anesthesia. Like, how many times do you do this type of surgery a week? 5 to 7 times. What? You mean that many people in just little Tukwila, Washington feel imprisoned in their bodies? And so does my kid? Quincy, you're in good hands. We gotta do this. 2 days later, Quincy has the top surgery. And they're fine, no croaking. We have to now get Quincy up to my apartment because I'm going to be nurse mommy, and I'm good at that. And their dad, my ex, and I each have an elbow. And we're getting Quincy up the stairs. But Dad's kind of not doing a great job being sensitive to what's just happened. And he's like, "Grab her arm. She needs help. Let's get up the stairs." Quincy, who is completely trashed on anesthesia, says, "Dad, just because I have an effing vagina does not mean that I'm an effing woman. And now I have the balls to tell you this. So if you keep misgendering me, you're going to lose me." Oh, snap. Quincy 2.0. A day and a half later, Quincy's waking up feeling better from anesthesia, and it's now the biggest day of all. The scariest day of all, but please be the best day of all. We're going to take off the bandage, check everything out, and make sure that the surgeon's work is on course. I'm standing before Quincy. Are you ready? And their eyes so blue and so scared and so excited and has so much hope in them. And I'm feeling like, please let this be a good day. Here I go. I remove the brace. I see the foam pad the doctor told me about. I remove that. And now it's just the bandage. You ready? Yeah. I remove the bandage. And the drainage tubes are doing good, and your chest. Oh my God, your chest. It's amazing. It looks like a boy's chest, honey. You look amazing already. Quincy bravely looks down at their course-corrected body and sees exactly what they wanted to see. And we just stand there and we just cry. We just, tears of joy and relief, and still knowing that we have quite a journey ahead of us, but they've done it. And here's my kid, this person that I gave birth to 22 years ago that has fought to feel genuine, fought to feel authentic. But I, for 22 years, unknowingly was saying she and her and shoving her into these blue dresses that they didn't want to wear. I was like the warden in that prison. This wasn't Quincy 2.0. This was Quincy 1.0. It's Mom 2.0. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing that story. Thank you.
In honor of God.
I'm so thankful that you did share your story, and that, in particularly this month. But it, obviously, this happens all the time. It's not just happening this month. But I am thankful that more people. The world is certainly not perfect, but it has come a bit of a way, and more people can speak about this, and bring it out into the open, because it is normal and it's where it belongs. Of course it's normal. It's always been normal, but it hopefully is becoming, some people at least are beginning to treat it as normal, and I am thankful for that, at least. So thank you.
Yeah, and I hope that it helps parents too, because we're not trained. We're not prepared necessarily. There's no handbook on this. And so I hope that the story can help bring some peace and normalcy, as you said, to a different situation. So
yeah,
thank you for
absolutely.
listening.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Melissa.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Well, next, I'm just going to give you a very quick bit about Tell&Act, which is the company that I work for. We basically work with our clients with the transformative art of storytelling to transform their business, their communities, and their personal lives. We also work with a lot of nonprofits. We've got lots of exciting projects coming up, particularly in the fall. That's really kicking off then. We're doing lots of work in healthcare, conferences. We're really excited about that, with the Congress of Neurological Surgeons and the Schwartz Center for Compassionate Care, kind of old clients of ours that we're really excited about working with again. We hope to be having a slam soon to bring all of our old friends together, hopefully in person, but we're just waiting to figure that out. But if we can have a party to kind of get back and unite, then that's what we're hoping to do. I'm going to be also hosting a free webinar on the 29th of June this month. It's a week tomorrow, in fact. And that is actually, basically, I've called it dyslexia and storytelling. Some of you may know that I am dyslexic. That's one of the first story that I ever told on stage was about me struggling with my dyslexia, and the struggles of the intolerance from other people towards my dyslexia and the mistakes that I've made. But for anybody watching that is dyslexic, knows somebody that is dyslexic, loves and cares for somebody that's dyslexic, please, if you just wave this in front of them. The details can be found at our website, which is in the comments. And the reason why I'm doing this is because many of us of the dyslexic community, we quite often struggle or avoid sharing our messages or our ideas or our wisdom in our written word. But many of us can speak pretty well. And that is why I want people to consider the power of storytelling in their everyday lives, not just telling their dyslexia stories, because we are more than that. You know, we are rocket scientists and doctors, and I think we have a doctor in the house that may be dyslexic. And you know, we span the whole of humanity. You know, we're only like 20% of the population. Okay, so that is why I'm doing this webinar. So like I said, you can find the details in the comments. One other thing quickly, we're really excited because we won a Webby Award, basically for Stories from the Stage, which is the TV show that we work on, national TV show. The Webbies, in case you don't know, it's like the international Oscars of online content. And the whole team that created this show won this award, and with these amazing storytellers who told the story of their stories of growing up Black in the US. So we hope to be announcing soon that we're going to be doing a special show through WGBH, featuring those storytellers and talking about the production behind the scenes. So we're really excited about that. Check out the link in the comments for up and coming news for that. Okay, but that's enough about us because we want to get on with this show. So please, can we have the next storyteller, please, Abby? Could you please bring up Brendan?
Thank you very much, Anna.
Hi, Brendan. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to read your bio quickly. Brendan Burke-Shale is a writer based in Houston. He is a frequent contributor to the monthly live show Grown Up Storytime and a member of the Rec Room Writers Group. He teaches creative writing classes for the Kinder High School of Performing and Visual Arts and the Alley Theatre. He's been named a finalist for the Reva Shiner Comedy Award and a writer in residence for the Writers' Colony at Dairy Hollow. He enjoys long walks through graveyards. I give you Brendan Burke-Shale. Take it away, Brendan.
So, about a year ago and some change, back when we all first started social distancing, I was stuck in this 420 square foot studio apartment, slowly losing my mind, and asking myself, what's a way for me to be around people without putting them at risk of infection? And the answer was obvious. Go to a cemetery. Lots of people. Zero risk of infection. Bonus, way less social anxiety than I get around the living. So, like a Victorian poet, I started taking daily walks through my local graveyard. I'm fortunate to live in the Spring Branch neighborhood of Houston, which is very close to a 300-year-old cemetery. I know that's not a big deal in Cambridge, by the way. I know you guys up in Cambridge can't, throw a bowl of chowder without hitting a historic cemetery, but they're kind of rare down here, so I felt lucky to be near one. And for the most part, the cemetery walks were a great distraction from social media at the time, which you'll remember was nothing but memes about Tiger King and toilet paper hoarding. The one thing that did make it a little weird is that there were a lot of people buried in the cemetery who were victims of the yellow fever epidemic of the 1800s. There was a mass grave of unidentified bodies in the back even, full of immigrants fresh off the boat from Germany who were here just long enough to get massacred by mosquitoes and say Auf Wiedersehen. And there is definitely something bleak about being around a bunch of people who died from one pandemic while you're in the middle of another pandemic, but it also made me feel a certain kinship with those beneath my feet. Maybe this is just because prolonged isolation was slowly chipping away at my sanity, but I sort of felt like we were connected. And as I got more comfortable in the graveyard, I picked up the hobby of grave shopping, which is what it sounds like, just going from one grave to the next, looking at what graves might inspire the grave that I will one day rest under. And I realized I'm 31, it's a little premature maybe to be picking out my grave, but on the other hand, I'm a teacher in a pandemic, so maybe not. And I started looking for graves that really stuck out to me. There were a couple statement graves that really jumped out. There was one that had no name, no date, just 2 words, gone fishin', respect. There was another one that had a sword sticking out of it, like the sword in the stone. Very cool, very D&D chic. One thing that I didn't find that I wish somebody would do is a grave where like it's rigged so that the second you step in front of it, a hand shoots out of the ground. I just feel like that's an untapped market. Somebody should jump on that. But anyway, my deep dive into headstones led me to the conclusion that I can't afford one. I don't know if you've ever had the misfortune of looking into how much headstones cost, but they're criminally expensive. Once you factor in sandblasting and installation, you're looking at $1,000 minimum. So that's a no for me. And that led me to look at the more modest graves in the plot. My question became, how do I make my graveside pop without breaking the bank? And that's what led me to the grave of Linda Ann James, 1948 to 2017. Linda's grave just was one of those simple, flat grave markers, but on top of it there was this whole nativity scene set up. And surrounding the nativity scene were these garden lights. And the lights were really what sold it. At night, those lights switched on, and they turned Linda's humble little square of the plot into the main attraction. And whoever Linda's family was, I really admired their ability to throw together a thrifty, distinctive memorial that could upstage entire family crypts. And I looked at it and I thought, that's what I want for my grave. That's it. I mean, like for me, it won't be a nativity scene. It'll be some other menagerie that depicts a story that's like important to me. Maybe like WrestleMania 30 when Brock Lesnar beat The Undertaker and broke his decades-long winning streak. Because for my money, there's no better story about accepting that death comes for us all, even the Reaper himself, and that there's dignity and beauty and grace in accepting that and allowing Brock Lesnar to pile drive you into oblivion. And so Linda's grave was really a game changer for me. And that's why it was really disturbing one day when I walked past it and the baby Jesus was missing from her nativity scene. No other piece of the manger was gone. Nothing was like tipped over. You know, if Mary and Joseph had been face down in the mulch, I could have attributed that to windy weather. But the fact that it was just Jesus out of place felt way too poetic to be accidental. This, I decided, was a grave robbing. And if it were any other time, I probably would have just shrugged it off. But again, early days of the virus, I had an infinity of free time and anxiety just waiting to get displaced into something like that. So I made it my mission to rectify the desecration of Linda's grave and get her a new Jesus. This turned out to be harder than you'd think. Even when the whole world isn't locked down, it's kind of hard to find just a baby Jesus by itself. You have to buy it as part of the whole manger set. And I did consider buying a whole menagerie just for the Jesus, but that would have meant separating the new Jesus from his family, which I worried Linda wouldn't appreciate. I did start looking online then for orphan plastic baby Jesuses, but the idea of making a bunch of Amazon employees sprint around a warehouse just for that felt like a case of the bad outweighing the good. Then I remembered I had a friend who had recently eaten a king cake. If you didn't know, king cakes are these really colorful, like coffee cakes that get eaten around Mardi Gras. They have a baby Jesus typically baked into them because, I don't know, I guess Cajuns like to flirt with the line between being devout and sacrilegious. And so I called up this friend who had the king cake and I was like, hey, do you still have the plastic baby Jesus from your cake? And she was like, why do you need a plastic baby Jesus? And I was like, don't worry about it. Do you have it or not? And she was like, yeah. So she left it out on her doorstep for me. I wiped it down with Lysol and I took it to Linda's grave. But my hopes of setting the dead to rest in peace were dashed when I got there and I realized it was too big. It was almost as big as Mary. The idea that she could have just given birth to this monster and lived to tell the tale seemed hard to believe, even in the context of a Bible story. Again, this would have been a good time to like shrug and laugh the whole thing off, but this was right around the time when it was starting to occur to me that the pandemic was going to rob me of my summer paycheck, and pretty soon I'd have trouble making rent. I think my feelings about that may have bled into my feelings about the Jesus situation, because suddenly I'm staring at this baby Jesus, this Lysol-scented, sugar-dusted deity, and I'm feeling a powerful urge to chuck him into the bayou, along with Mary and Joseph and the Magi and the ass and the last dregs of my sanity. But I was surrounded by dead Christians, so I restrained myself. Instead, I kneeled down and I said, sorry, Linda, I thought I could take care of this for you, but I guess not. Maybe when the toy stores open back up, I can shoplift the baby out of a Barbie set or something. And as I'm down there, I notice what looks like a colorful little pebble lodged deep between Linda's stone and the grass. And I reach down and grab it and see it's the original baby Jesus, cradle and all. And I return him to his rightful place at the center of the manger. And for the first time since pandemic started, I feel like I've accomplished something. I mean, granted, all I did was spend 48 hours looking for a Jesus that was never actually missing, but it felt good. I mean, it was still a bad day within a bad week within a bad era of human history, but silver linings. I try to appreciate those silver linings because, as that tiny plastic Jesus taught me, the distance from cradle to grave is always shorter than you think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. Such wise words. That is
yes, thank you, Jesus.
That is a really sweet story. That is a really poignant story, and I think will leave many people thinking this evening, which is the best kind of story. And I love how, with storytelling, there is a story in everything, and I love, the idea of walking in graveyards. When I first read that in your bio, I was like, oh, that's a bit odd, but it makes really good sense, particularly for someone who likes storytelling and is interested in other people's stories, because there's just a treasure trove of stories there. We might not be able to access them, but they're all kind of there. So I think that's really sweet, and the time that you took to care for that grave, I think, is really sweet. So thank you very much. Thank you. Love the silver lining. And do we need more of those? Thank you so much, Brendan. Okay, so now we're going to go to our last storyteller of the evening, but I would like all the audience to stay, because after we've listened to the last storyteller's story, we're going to come back for a small talk back and just sort of discuss what we've kind of learned through the storytelling process. So that should be really interesting, and particularly from these great masters. But the last storyteller, Abby, if you could just bring up Warren, I will read. Hi, Warren.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome. I'm just going to read your bio quickly, and then you can take the stage, please. Warren is a former professor of behavioral science at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. After spending most of his adult life putting exhausted medical students to sleep with boring PowerPoint lectures, I don't think that's true, Warren now pursues his dream of becoming a bona fide storyteller. Over the last 5 years, his stories have been featured on the Moth Radio Hour, the Moth Main Stage, TEDx, the National Storytelling Summit, and Warren enjoys telling personal stories as well as family and historical stories for his rural roots, from his rural roots in North Carolina and Texas. His hobbies include trail running, baseball, gardening, and playwriting. I hand the stage to you, Warren. Take it away.
Thank you, Anna. In honor of Pride Month, I'd like to tell a story about my first visit to a gay bar. To be honest, it was pretty much my first visit to any bar. I was born and raised a Southern Baptist. I'll have a little more to say about that momentarily. The year was either 1993 or 1994. I was in my mid to late 30s, and I was going through a career change. I was back in graduate school studying psychology, and the course was on family systems, and the assignment was to get a group of people together and have some role plays around conflicts that families might have to resolve, and to film those role plays and then present them to the class. Now, most of the students recruited classmates to be in the improvisational role plays. I did that, but also I had a friend who was a professional actor. He was really good. I thought if I can get him to be in my role play, it'll be good. Now, my friend Grant had been featured in many theaters around Houston. He'd been in a number of movies. If you happen to catch the movie The North Dallas 40, he was hilarious in the role of the team chaplain for the Dallas Cowboys in that show. But now Grant was getting up in years. He was in failing health, and he was struggling financially. So I thought he can help my role play, and in return, I'll have an excuse to compensate him, help him financially. Well, we did the role play on a Tuesday night. We filmed it. It came out really well. Afterwards, I reached for my wallet. I was going to pay him and then drive him home. He stepped back and said, "You know what I'd really like? Could you take me out for a couple of beers?" Now, the Baptist part of me was doing this because in the Baptist church I was raised in, either you were a church person or a bar person, but you could not possibly be both. But Grant had done me a favor, and I thought that's the least I could do for him. So at his instruction, we headed south on Greenbrier Street. Now, I knew enough about bars to know that most of the bars were north on Greenbrier. But there was one bar south, and it was called the Briar Patch. And for the men of my generation, that was basically Houston's first gay bar. And although by 1993 there were many others, this was the one the older men preferred. So we parked the car. We're heading toward the door. Grant turns, grabs me by the arm, and he had this way of having a twinkle in his eye when he had a mischievous thought. And little did I know that for the next 2 hours, he would not let go of my arm. And for the next 2 hours, he was recruiting me to be in a role play that he was devising right then, in which Grant would play the part of himself, an aging, rather queenish, flamboyant gay man, and I would play the part of his much younger, like 35 years younger, boyfriend. So we go in the bar, and Grant was in poor health, but you wouldn't have known it. He was full of energy and enthusiasm, taking me around, introducing me to all of his friends. And the truth is, I couldn't see any of them. The bar was so dark, and there was so much cigarette smoke. But actually, I found myself liking it. The place was so friendly. There was so much joy. There was a sense of camaraderie and community. And I sensed this was a refuge where Grant and his friends could just be themselves and not worry about the world out there. Well, eventually my eyes adjusted, and I realized the beautiful music I was hearing was not coming from a sound system. This was a piano bar. And at a given moment, the pianist started playing Broadway show tunes, and all the men there dropped whatever they were doing. They came around the piano and sang. All the men knew all the words to all the songs. I didn't want to embarrass my friend, so I pretended to know the words to the songs. I did my best. And then there was a moment when the pianist had me sit down on the bench beside him. He said, "Now we're playing a tribute to Grant's new boyfriend." And they sang a song about this older man who was a Broadway show tune, who had a younger girlfriend. But in this case, they changed the words to boyfriend. The whole time Grant was standing behind me with his arms around me, and he was loving it. Then after about 20 or 30 minutes of that, the tunes and the tone changed from one of sort of revelry to one of reverence. And that kind of caught me off guard. The tunes sounded very familiar, but I couldn't identify them initially in this particular context. I wasn't used to being in bars. And then it hit me. He's playing a Baptist hymn. And for the next 20 or 30 minutes, he played one hymn after another. And I knew all the words to all those songs, and so did all the men there. But the thing was, for the first time, the words began to make sense. They took on a completely new meaning. We sang softly and tenderly, "Jesus is Calling," one of my favorite hymns. I had never heard that song sung with such sweet, sincere conviction. We sang "Just as I Am." If you grew up in a country Baptist church, you sang that just about every Sunday at the end of the service. That's the altar call song where you go forward to be saved. When I was 7 years old, I went forward on the second verse of "Just as I Am." I still remember it, but I actually knew very little of what that song meant. But these men knew. The idea that God accepts me just as I am. I never really fathomed the extent of the meaning of that statement. And then, of course, they sang "Amazing Grace," another song about God's unconditional love. The second verse of that song spoke to me particularly. "Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. 'Tis grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home." I'll bet I had sung that song 500 times at least in my life. But I had always viewed those dangers, toils, and snares as being, quote, the world out there, as being places like bars that might snare me away from following God. To these men, the danger, toil, and snare was largely in the church itself, where they had been ostracized. And I realized they had come here and turned this bar into a church. And now tears were streaming down my face, and it wasn't because of the cigarette smoke. I'm beginning to think this bar church divide isn't quite the way I was taught. And then there was a pause, and the pianist played what proved to be the benediction of this worship service. It was a very reverent tune, but again, I couldn't pick it out from the Baptist hymnal that was in my mind. And then I realized this hymn, this very reverent song, was written by the person I now consider to be the great Baptist hymn writer, Leonard Bernstein. And it's from the musical West Side Story. It's a song about a young man and a young woman who, because of prejudice and bigotry, are not allowed to be the people that they were born to be, and not allowed to love the people they were born to love. And the men sang that song like a hymn, like an anthem. And the words of this song haunt me to this day. There's a place for us, somewhere, a place for us. Take my hand and I'll take you there. Hold my hand, we're halfway there. I was literally holding Grant's hand when we sang those words. We'll find a new way of living. We'll find a way of forgiving. Talk about the gospel being embraced. And Grant's health continued to deteriorate after that. He continued to cut my hair. That was the one thing that he did, and I could sort of financially compensate him a bit that way. But he wasn't able to go out anymore, and I guess this was our one date. And he died about a year or year and a half later. But I've always been grateful to Grant because he took my hand and he took me there and he showed me that place. And I honestly believe that in that dark and smoky bar, I saw a glimpse of heaven. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you so much for telling that story, for sharing it with all of us. And I'm so very sorry about your friend Grant. That's it's a bit rubbish. But the story is beautiful. It's really beautiful. I'm really glad that you've shared it. And I think it's that thing with storytelling is that and it's some of the biggest lessons I learn in life these days are listening to people's stories and listening to how. So I have a thing that I call them and us, and I think that storytelling closes the divide between them and us. When we have this shared humanity and we open our minds and we listen and we break out of our little social norms and, for example, going from the church to the bar, are we a church people or a bar people or are this people or are that people, and I think that that's storytelling kind of blurs those lines and makes more of us and them. We can be both. So I think that's super cool. Thank you very, very much for sharing. Abby, could you please bring everybody back onto the screen? We love technology. Magic. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories. I would just like to ask you all a question before you go. If you give me, I'm on the spot now, but I know we can answer this question. If I can ask you to give one answer to the question, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned since you've been storytelling and listening to stories? What would that be? Maybe if we start with Kent, because you told your story first.
The biggest lesson I think I've learned in storytelling is that we're all connected, and that through the details of our lives, and obscure and as bizarre as we think those details of our lives, other people can relate to, even though it's our lives. The more specific and the more detailed we are, the more the story's relatable. Mm-hmm. And that it's really hard to dislike someone after you hear their story. That stories bring us together. And what's the line? Storytelling it's like hammers. It can break kneecaps or it can build bridges. And I like to think that it builds bridges.
I like that. I have a new saying. I'm going to scribble that down when we're done. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Melissa, what would you say? What would your answer be? What is the kind of biggest lesson you've learned since you've been telling and listening stories? We can't hear you.
That I actually have stories that are very vulnerable, and when I share them, it's like Kent, it's like it bridges people to that human connection. And I am addicted to storytelling. I have the pleasure of not only sharing stories, but I work with quite a few wonderful storytellers. We meet twice a week, 2 hours a day. And it's really, you hear everyone's story and their take and their style. And because we all have our own style. And I just love the individuality that storytelling brings.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, thank you. I'm amazed at quite often if someone will ask me if do you have a story on this theme? I'm like, nope.
Yes. Actually, yes.
And then I'm like, I don't know what to choose now. And also when we work with clients and they're like, I don't have a story. I mean, this is kind of a story. I don't think anyone's going to want to listen to it. And then they start telling us and we're like, are you kidding me? That is a story. That is a story. So yeah, it's kind of cool. I like that. Very. Brendan, what would you say? What's the biggest thing that you think that you've learned since you've been telling and listening stories?
I think you just kind of said it. It's the act of realizing you know more than you thought you knew as you're kind of telling your own story, as you're delving into it, you're realizing things, and the exercise of having to figure out how to convey that to people who don't live inside your brain and share your particular variety of chaotic thinking. It's just a process of sort of like discovering all these abilities and this ability to fall in love that you didn't know was even in you sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love it. Yeah, I totally agree. And then Warren, what would you say the biggest lesson that you've learned since you've been telling and listening stories?
One time I went to a story slam and the theme was courage. And I stood up and bragged about the time I stood up to the boss. And that story fell so flat. And from after that, I told myself I will never tell a story about anything good I've ever done. I'm going to just tell stories about things I've done wrong, my weaknesses, my vulnerabilities. And I just, that's what I learned. People can't connect with you if you think you're the best thing there is. But if you're like them, imperfect, then they can connect with those stories.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's a really important lesson. And yeah, I completely agree. Quite often, and I think this is when people in like business presentations and stuff, we kind of, the old-fashioned way was taught to be perfect, was taught to be tough and perfect and unyielding and certainly not vulnerable, because vulnerable is a very, very scary place to be, and you'll probably get attacked. You mustn't do that. I think things are changing now, and we realize just by hanging out with people, other human beings, like the person in the room that acts perfect, that kind of talks about themselves all the time or kind of brags all of the time, isn't always the most favorite person and the most liked person in the room, because also it's not really very real, because we're all imperfect and we kind of tend to be almost like disarmed socially by people that are flawed. It's quite refreshing. it's quite nice. So yeah, I really agree with that. But can I just add one little thing? I have to add one little thing to that, just from my perspective, is that women could just like meet in the middle. There is a balance. We don't all have to be self-deprecating, and we don't all have to be vulnerable all of the time. We can show strength, you know, because I just find that there is it's not always it varies. You know, there are women that just brag and act perfect, and then almost too fragile or whatever. But women have a kind of a, particularly in the US and like, terribly so in the UK, it's painful. We have a habit of going, I'm so sorry, I'm not very good at this, I'm not good enough for this, you just do it. So I just would like to just add that to the mix for women that are out there. There is a balance to be held, and some of us could be a bit tougher in that sense and a bit more proud of what we do. You are allowed to be proud of what you do. That's perfectly okay. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I find it hard to brag on myself in stories, but I love using them as an opportunity to brag on the people I love. And that's something I noticed in like all the stories tonight, and Kent talking about his parents and Melissa talking about Quincy and Warren talking about Grant. You get this opportunity to sort of publicly love, which is more powerful in some ways than just sort of, keeping it to yourself. And I love that part of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I really agree with that. So I'm going to keep this show just short and sweet, because the power really has been in your story and in your words, and I don't want to detract from that. So I'm going to wish you guys can all stay backstage after we leave, but I am going to say thank you so much, Abby. Thank you to Club Passim for having us. Thank you for all the work that you're doing in the community to support artists, struggling artists through the pandemic. That means a lot to us, and we are grateful. And I wish the audience a very good night, and please go and have a think about all these wonderful stories. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.